Aloha and welcome to this practice WOD, part 2 of the Digits application. We're going to work on the list contacts page and make a mock-up of it. When we're done, it's going to look like this. And standard prelude. You can watch the screencast before you try it. I think that's a good way to, kind of get yourself together, but don't watch the screencast while you do it, okay? You won't learn enough really if you do it that way. You're also going to have to learn to merge because you're going to be merging your landing page into master prior to starting this WOD, so you can watch the video and do it. If you have any problems, you can send something to Slack. And so as a result, when you're done with this, your GitHub desktop should say that you're in master, but if you run the application, you'll be seeing the revised landing page. So that's how you know that you've done a successful merge, that master now contains the results of your what was in a branch before. Okay, and I've got I've got Meteor running, and so let's jump right into it. So we'll start the timer. And we want to create a branch called List Contacts Page version 1. So we'll go to GitHub Desktop. We'll say New Branch, List Contacts Page -1. Be based on master, which is good. And there we are. We're in this branch. And we don't have to really do anything. We've already started our application, and just switching the branches doesn't change the state of anything, or creating a branch doesn't change the state, so we should be fine. Alright, so we're going to create a new page for listing the contacts, and this is going to be called listcontacts.jsf, and we might as well, JSX, we might as well base it on the list stuff JX page, because that's going to be kind of close. We'll do some renaming of list stuff to list contacts inside. We'll remove the table, change the header text to list contacts, and we'll add inverted so that it looks like it's white. Okay, so let's play around with that stuff. So we'll find here's our list stuff page. I'll do a propeller C, propeller V to make a copy of it, and it's going to say list contacts is the name of the page. And so here we are in list contacts, and let's just expand this so I can see what I'm doing. We'll change list stuff to list contacts. So the name of the component will now be list contacts, and that's going to require us to change a couple more references to it. List contacts. Okay. So having done that, things look okay, and then we wanted to get rid of this table because we're not going to have any of that in there, and we wanted to change this to list contacts, and we're going to do inverted because that's the way we'll get the text to be white. Okay, so if I go back here, I think we've all done that. Then in app.jsx we want to go to list contacts rather than list stuff when we're at the list place, the list URL. So in app.jsx I see list stuff, so I want to say list contacts, and that makes this invalid, so list contacts, and maybe I'll just keep that like that. And then it says in app imports components navbar.jsx, change the link from list stuff to list contacts. So let's go back to our navbar, and instead of saying list stuff, we're going to say list contacts. Alright, so I think I've gone through all 4 of these things. I'm supposed to log in as john@foo.com to see the changes. So I go here, let's just check to see terminal, everything looks reasonable. And how do I know how to log in? Well, remember in the config settings.development.json we have some default accounts, one of which is john@foo.com, and the password is change me. So let's just go and try to do that. So we'll say sign in john@foo.com change me. Okay, so cancel. We've got our list contacts. But wait, okay, we're displaying the list stuff, not the list contacts. All right, now why is that? Let's go back to list contacts, and we see we have some ESLint things, which I guess we can get rid of, and we no longer use stuff items, so I can delete that. But if we go into app.js, we can see, okay, I'm under list, I'm doing list contacts, so I go up here, list contacts, but then I notice from pages, list stuff. Okay, so it's called list contacts, but I'm still using that component, so that's the problem. I want to change this to list contacts, and if I save that out and go back here, okay, now I've got, and let me just bring up the console so we can see if anything's going on there. Now this looks just like it should. Okay, so we finished this part. Okay, now let's move on to the next one, which is to define some sample contact data in the list contacts component. Create a field called contacts that contains a list of contact information. To avoid senseless typing, use this. Okay, so let's now copy this. Let me just quit this so we don't have these crazy messages coming up. So I'm going to make a copy of this, and we're going to put it in the list contacts component. Let's go to list contacts, and right here we're going to create this field. Okay, and let's go back and see what I'm supposed to do. So I've created a field called contacts that contains a list of contact information. Now I'm going to create a card component to hold that data. So I'll make a copy of stuff item, which was in the original template. That's what holds an individual item. And we call that contact. I'll rename internal references to contact. And the contact component will be passed to contact as a property. So the contact is an object with a structure shown above. So each contact is going to look like one of these guys. Okay, it's going to have a first name, a last name, address, image, and description. And then we're going to use the card documentation to render a card that contains a first name, last name, address, image, and description. So let's kind of set up the structure, and then we'll look at the card. So the first thing is we want to make something called contact.jsx based on stuff item. So let's take stuff item and make a copy. We're going to call this contact.jsx, and then we'll say contact extends React, and then this is going to be contact, and this is going to be contact, and then we won't have this table row, but we are being passed a property called contact. That's that object. So we're going to rename stuff to contact to more properly reflect what we're doing. Okay. So we want to use the card documentation to render a card that looks like what we want. So here's, we could render it like this, we could render it like that, but the one I kind of like this one with this little tiny guy. So let's open up the way this looks, and we see that we have a card with card content. So I don't know, one way to do this is just to make a copy of this sample stuff, and let's just throw this in here, and we've got to import card to get rid of this thing, and apparently we're also going to need image. Okay, and now instead of the source being this, the source is now going to be this.props.contact.image. Okay, so you remember if we go back to list contacts, we have an image field of each of these contacts, and that's how we're going to refer to it when we get past this contact object as a property. This.props.contacts.image will make that. The card header, why don't we just make that the first name and the last name, just like this guy has. And the way we do that is we say this.props.contact.firstname, and then this.props.contact.lastname. And then for the meta field, why don't we put in, I don't know, the address. This.props.contact.address. And for the description, let's just put the description. This.props.contact.description. And then this other card context stuff we're not going to have it all. Okay, so there is, a card, right? Should look pretty much like, let's get rid of this link that we don't need anymore. Should look, pretty reasonable. And well, we'll look like this, and then you can always fiddle around with it later, but that should, give a reasonable looking card. Okay, so now what we need to do is in list contacts, we need to render a card.group. Okay, so cards have this idea of a group, right, which is a group of cards. Okay, and then, and it's pretty easy. Basically, the idea is, is you just say card.group, and then you have your cards inside. So what we're going to do here is in our list contacts, following our container, we're going to say, okay, we got a card.group, and then inside there we want to have a bunch of cards, right? That's how this looks. You got a card.group, and then you got all your cards, going inside it. So how do we get all of our cards to be inside there? The way we're going to do that, we're going to map through our contacts field, and we're going to invoke our card component. Our contact component. We're going to map through our contacts field and invoke our contact component with each element. Okay, so the way to do that is to say, here we use our syntax for reactive evaluative expression. This.contacts.map, okay, and then inside there we're going to pass a function. The function is going to take a contact and then an index, okay, and then that will be mapped to a call to contact with key equal index and contact equal to contact. All right, so add, we need to have a closing brace. Don't need that. Okay, but we do need the close of the map. Okay, there we go. And contact is not defined, so let's import that. Import contact from /imports UI components contact. Okay, and also we need a card, so let's add a card. Okay. Alright, so what have we done here? We're mapping through all of the elements of this data structure, which is an array of objects. Each object represents one contact. And then we call the map function on this array, which is defined in ECMAScript 6, and we are passing a function that takes two parameters. The first parameter is, always for the map function is going to be an element of the array that it's invoked on. And then it takes a second optional parameter, which is an index, indicating the position of the element in the array. That's useful because when you have multiple, when you're mapping through things, React wants there to be a key field with a unique element, unique identity, so that it can manipulate the virtual DOM when things change. So it just wants to do that, and this is just the design pattern or idiom, if you want to call it, that you use when you're mapping through to make sure that there's a unique key for each of these elements. And then the property we're going to pass in called contact is just the object from this array. When we invoke contact, you can see here's the property. Okay, it's going to be an object, an instance, one of those objects that we had, and then we just render, the elements of that particular object. All right. So now let's look and see first. Okay, we're rebuilding. That's good. And then if we go here to digits, we can see we've got our contacts. The only problem is they look a little off-center. Okay, so if we go back to card, what we can see here is there's a centered property we could add to cards. Okay, so let's go back to our contact, and what we'll do is we'll say card centered. Let's see if we can fix that. We do that, go back to here. Very nice. Okay, now it's centered. We're seeing all our data. And in fact, if we go back and look at this, I'd say we're not getting any errors, so we could close that, and this looks pretty much just exactly the same. So that took us about 16 minutes. And so when our page renders correctly, which it does, we can stop our timer, and then we can go to GitHub Desktop, and we can, what do we have to say again? We have to say list contacts page mockup finished in 16 minutes. List contacts page mockup finished in 16 minutes. List contacts page mockup finished in 16 minutes. Commit it locally to our repo. We publish the branch. We should have published that before, but it's okay to publish it now. And there you have it. Okay. So that's 16 minutes to do it the first time. I think you should go through it a second time. I'm giving you a couple days for each of these to give you extra time so you can go through this twice. Because I think the second time through you might run into some different kinds of errors or problems, and you'll learn more, and you'll just feel more comfortable with these kind of manipulations. So enjoy working on this. I'll see you next time.